My name's Bill Perry. I'm an aquatic ecologist, and this is what I consider my office, sitting in a stream, even if it's an agricultural stream. I'm really interested in what the quality of life for the aquatic animals are in this stream, how good this water is to downstream communities, whether it's a drinking water reservoir or as it ends up in the Gulf of Mexico. And I'm interested in ways that we can keep this water quality good and improve it. I've been working with farmers for about 20 years now, trying to understand what's going on in the fields and how that affects water quality. One of the things in Central Illinois and many of the other plain states that has a dramatic effect on water quality is subsurface drainage or drainage tiles. Here's an old tile from probably the early 1900s. The early German settlers in Illinois put in enough of this tile to circle the globe about 6 times at the equator in the late 1800s, and we're putting in more now as plastic corrugated tile. So what happens is these tiles undercut many of the management efforts you put to improve the water quality here. It doesn't keep nutrients in your field. It takes a nutrient straight from the soil, brings it underneath the buffer strips and right into the stream. And it comes in so fast, it increases the erosion in these ditches, transporting sediments downstream and bringing in a lot of nitrogen. That nitrogen is what's been applied to the fields early in the fall or in the spring, and it's being lost to these streams. The diversity in these streams is actually quite high. You can see this is a relatively clear stream. To keep the nitrogen they applied to the fields in the fields. And that's what we're really interested in. Okay, so what you see behind me is a field with no cover crop. It's barren for a long time, nothing growing on it. Wind erodes some of the soil. Any water that lands on there, if they've applied nitrogen in the fall, it's being converted to nitrate, and it's percolating down through the soil, hitting the tiles, and washing straight to the stream behind me. There's nothing preventing the loss of that nitrogen from the fields unless they put on nitrification inhibitors or things like that. So there's no way to prevent the loss of nitrogen. There is a nice buffer strip here, but this buffer strip is undercut by tiles. So it's not preventing a lot of nitrogen from entering the stream that's right behind me. Now there's a lot of ways that we can prevent nitrogen from getting into the streams. A lot of the protocols being adopted now are edge of field management efforts. One is this big grass bufferway here. That might prevent, in some cases, nutrients from getting into the stream if it's not a heavily tile drained area. The other one is this box right here. This is a tile diverter. It has water coming in from our left. The water comes in, and inside of it are 2 baffles. One is here. This keeps the water back in the fields. It flows into this next chamber here, and going out in that direction is another tile that is buried all the way about 100 meters upstream. And there's a gate over here that if the water is below that gate, most of the water is going up into that tile and then slowly saturating the buffer strip, and then slowly going into the stream, and we see a significant reduction of nitrogen. If there's too much water coming in, it will go over this other baffle and then enter the stream directly, as if that subsurface drain tile going up through the saturated buffer wasn't there. This, combined with wetlands or bioreactors, are all edge of field. They don't help the economics of keeping nitrogen in the field, because it's all being dealt with on the edge just before it enters the stream. They are effective methods, and they do help the downstream community and the community in the stream here, and improves water quality. But it doesn't help the economics of the farmer keeping nitrogen in the field. Now, one way we have of keeping nitrogen in the field is, rather than have a barren field during the winter, we can actually plant a crop on it. Traditional crops are cereal rye, annual rye, tillage radish, winter wheat or oats. You can see here is a nice rye stand. It's really coming up in the spring when we lose most of our nutrients from the fields. The rye will take up the nutrients, bind them up in this green biomass. It prevents wind erosion, which you can hear a lot of wind right now. And it also prevents water erosion. If it is frozen, the water won't move across the top of this soil that's frozen as quickly and get into the stream. You can see the mud that's in here. This is nice soil, really dark. As this crop is terminated, it will slowly decompose and release the nutrients back into the subsequent crops, corn or soybeans in our case. And it will increase soil organic carbon, increase soil fertility, and it has an effect on holding more water in the soil later in the season when it starts to dry up and the crops really need it. And it has a more homogeneous water content through the soil. And we're still developing deep corn roots in that case. Now, the one issue in talking to a lot of farmers is they agree this is a great method. The problem is economics. What do you do with this crop after you terminate it? It helps you in the long run, but it doesn't help you in the short run. So a lot of interest right now is going into how can we commoditize or get value out of this crop or other crops that are grown in the winter when we're not growing corn or soybeans. So my interest is the ecosystem services cover crops provide and how they can keep nutrients in the field before they get to the streams and downstream communities, so we can protect water quality while at the same time keeping nutrients in the fields and increasing farmers' economic income. This is done using, in this case, pennycress, which is a weed that was introduced back in the 1700s that's in the process of being domesticated. It may function like other cover crops, the cereal rye, the annual rye, or the oats that are often grown in fields as cover crops, but this has an economic value. You can see it's growing here quite well. We've got some weeds, but this is fall germinated. We have some spring germinated pennycress growing, and we're interested in how they function as an ecosystem service or as a cover crop. You can see a lysimeter or a pore water sampler. We're looking at how much nitrogen is immobilized in this pennycress crop relative to a reference plot that's up to our northeast from here. So what we're looking at is how pennycress can hold nutrients in the field, and if it's similar to cereal rye, and over here we can see it compared to a reference plot up there. And that's what we're hoping to look at. We're also looking at not just the soil pore water, but we have these samplers at the edge of the field of each of these plots, and they automatically sample water that's leaving these control subsurface drained plots to see how much nutrients are leaving these fields. So as water comes down the subsurface drains from each of those individual plots, we sample water automatically as it moves through these agri-drain boxes, which allow us to sample the water and how much water is leaving so we can get the nutrients out of it. And that washes down into the stream where we lose nutrients and water out of those tiles, and that's what we're interested in.